If you're here, then for some reason or other, you've missed Carlotta. You might have lost the 50-50, or you didn't have the airstrides, or maybe you're just skipping her like me. If that's you, don't worry. Today I'm going to tell you why I think that missing Carlotta doesn't matter. But before that, I'm going to start by saying something bold. I think Carlotta was bait. Wow, that is the 5th sentence on this channel. I'm off to a great start. Now don't get me wrong, if you pulled Carlotta, that is perfectly fine. You haven't bricked your account, and in fact, you've pulled one of the strongest units in the game. And she has one of the strongest supports in the game on her team. Together, they make a team that's, what, top 5, top 3? You aren't going to regret that decision in the future. But I get the feeling that Rinascita is going to give us a bunch of characters that are also on her level. The devs gave us quite a few clues that hint at characters that will be overpowered in the future. So if you skipped Carlotta, you can watch this video to figure out who to pull for next. Let's get started. I bet you didn't expect that for the first entry. I genuinely believe Spectra Rover is about to spike up something fierce. They're primarily a healer because they aren't that great at much else, but they have a few more features that I think are underrated by the community. The first is that they can slow down time. You can think of this as a mini damage boost on mobile bosses and enemies that have vibration strength. Essentially, it increases the damage window on all enemies in the game. The second is that they have Spectro damage reduction, which you can think of as a team-wide Spectro damage boost, so Rover can heal and indirectly boost the damage of Spectro allies in 2 different ways. Why isn't Spectro Rover used more? Well, at this stage Rover is homeless. There is only one viable Spectro DPS in the game, Jin Shi, but Jin Shi is reliant on coordinated attacks to build her forte, and coordinated attacks is something Rover does not do. At this stage, you can't justify squeezing Spectra Rover onto a team just to slow down time for 5 seconds. And there are simply too many better options to run. All Spectra Rover needs is a Spectra DPS that isn't reliant on coordinated attacks to cement a place in the meta for themselves. And trust me, Rover is about to get that and more. With the 2.0 update, Spectra Rover received a significant buff that enhances their support capabilities. Both their Resonance Liberation and Resonance Skill now apply stacks of Frazzle, a damage over time effect. Here's how it works. When you use an attack that applies Frazzle, the stacks will begin to decrease over time. Each time a stack decreases, it does a tick of damage to the enemy, and to maximize your damage output, it is essential to keep the Frazzle stacks topped up constantly. Rover's Elemental skill is crucial for this, because it temporarily locks the number of Frazzle stacks in place, allowing you to do maximum damage while keeping the number of stacks topped up. And what truly ties the whole kit together is the new Sonata set, which perfectly complements this mechanic. I am of course talking about the new Eternal Radiance Sonata set. The 2-piece gives 10% Spectra damage bonus, but the 5-piece gives 15% Spectra damage bonus for 15 seconds when a character attacks an enemy that has 10 stacks of Frazzle up. This is busted, but not because of the 15% Spectra damage. That's good and all, but that's not what sticks out the most. The thing that sticks out the most is that Rover doesn't need to equip the set to facilitate the Spectra damage buff. Rover can swap in, build up the 10 Spectra Frazzle stacks, and then swap out to another character that is using the 5-piece Eternal Radiance set and receive full support. And Rover can double dip on support by equipping the 5-piece Rejuvenating Glow set or the 5-piece Moonlit Cloud set. I think Rejuvenating Glow will be better in the long run because I can see the game going the mono team route, but that is a topic for another video. The point is, when all is said and done, Rover can heal the team, reduce the enemy Spectra resistance by 10%, slow down time, and then thanks to the Rinascita update, Rover can also facilitate Spectra Frazzle and increase the entire team's Spectra damage by 15%. And depending on what echoes you use, they can additionally give the entire team 10% extra attack along with 50% damage reduction and 10% energy regen, or increase the attack of the next resonator by an additional 22.5% and give the next incoming resonator 12% attack. With all that explained, there is one more thing to ask. Will another 5-star release that power creeps Rover? I think the question is actually, if you wanted to power creep Rover, how would you do it? Rover is pretty much doing everything you can ask the support to do. They can maintain 10 stacks of Frazzle and stop it from going back down with their short skill cooldown. And with an energy regen build, they heal the entire team constantly, and you probably want to build energy regen because it helps facilitate Frazzle. Rover has consolidated so many roles into their kit that it's not easy to power creep them. I don't think they will be replaced with a different, better 5-star alternative. I think they are the Spectro support. And to illustrate the point further, I decided to show how easy it is to keep the number of Frazzle stacks at 10 and get the buff from the Sonata set. I decided to fight the Crownless with Rover and Yuanwu. I didn't use Calculator because he does a bit too much damage, but look at how little field time Rover requires. Since their forte adds 2 stacks to the enemy and holds it in place, Rover doesn't need to do much but wait until the number of stacks falls to 8 or maybe 9, jump out, use their skill, maybe use a charge attack to replace the forte, and disappear again. And that's not all. Their Liberation adds 6 stacks to the counter, so if you miss, you've got the Liberation to fall back on. Rover uses even less field time if you constantly use her intro skill. Spectro Rover was never bad, they just didn't have a 5-star DPS to play off, so their roles were limited. Jinshi was the Spectro DPS in version 1, and Rover didn't work with them. But ironically, Jinshi is probably the more limited of the two, because you aren't just going to stumble into new resonators that power creep Zhezha. She needs a specific support, but Rover is a shoo-in for mono Spectro teams. With this in mind, building Rover will not be a bad idea. But hold your horses, we need to talk about who might be the DPS on her team. I knew from the moment I saw the new Eternal Radiance set that the devs were preparing to release a new Spectro DPS that would work with Rover. And now that the Drip marketing has revealed Phoebe to be Spectro, I think it's safe to say that she is the one. Rover's abilities are so widespread that just by existing, a Spectro DPS will have high synergy with them. If a character releases that doesn't work with Rover, it is because the devs have designed them specifically not to work with Rover. As of right now, we don't know anything about Phoebe's kit, so it's hard to say how strong she's going to be, or even if she's going to be a DPS. But you don't draft a play if you're not going to use it. The new Eternal Radiance set is designed for a Spectro DPS, not a support. It would be strange for the first Spectro unit released in Rinascita to be used on a Jinzo Sonata set. But even though it's strange, it's not impossible. It would be wise to double check that Phoebe is indeed a DPS before pulling for her and finding out she's a support or a hybrid. That could be tragic. What we do know is that if she is a DPS, then she's going to have a team that is really cheap to build. We have Phoebe as the DPS, and the team doesn't function without her. And then we have Rover as support, and they're free. The hybrid spot depends on the rest of her kit, but there are many 4-star options that can buff different parts of her kit. Lumi buffs resonance skills, Yang Yang buffs resonance liberations, and I heavily doubt that Sanhua will be used to buff basic attacks. She's had more than enough use on various teams, but there is one unit I hope finds a place on other teams. Next we have Yang Yang, another unit that is homeless right now, but she has the skeleton of a pretty good kit. Essentially, Yang Yang does 3 things. She increases the attack of the next resonator by 20% for 20 seconds. That is a monster buff, by the way. She provides some crowd control, and she recovers 20 resonance energy for the next character on the team. Right now, there isn't anyone that benefits from Yang Yang's energy battery abilities, but it's only a matter of time, I would say. Brant seems to be the character that will use the Tide-Breaking Courage set, and the Dragon of Dirge, the forecast of the set, provides 12% fusion damage. But the interesting thing about this set is that it seems to be encouraging you to build the character wearing it with as much energy recharge as possible. That's very interesting. It suggests to me that the character's kit will be based around their resonance liberation. Yang Yang might be able to find a home in Brant's team. And if not, then wherever she finds herself, the main DPS will more than likely be on this set. Hi guys, it's Cycloid here and I'm editing the video, and while I was editing it just occurred to me that there are people that make use of Yang Yang's abilities very well, and those are the transforming units, Calcharo, Encore, and Jian. She actually allows them 100% uptime on their transformations, and they don't really care, which means she isn't homeless in the meta like I thought. She's actually just bad. I thought her support was so busted because it lasted for such a long time, but then I realized, oh, it only lasted a long time so that it doesn't run out in the middle of the transformation. And even if a unit comes out in the future that has a lot of energy recharge and is reliant on their burst, the only reason you'd run Yang Yang is if the devs basically kick them in the balls, because they're just useless without it. Their energy requirements are too high for no reason, in which case that unit still wouldn't use Yang Yang because that's just a bottom tier unit. That burst would have to be the most disgusting. It needs to just lay you in bed, to be honest, and just, like, you know, have its way with you to be like a top tier unit to be worth putting Yang Yang on the team. So yeah, it's sad, but them's the breaks. Sorry guys.
There's no way out of this one. You're done.
I think we can all agree that everyone and their mother owns Shorekeeper at this point. But I don't, so this section matters to me. I don't need to explain what Shorekeeper does. It's obvious that she's a must pull. And if you've been paying attention, you'll find that she's already due her rerun. Funny how the schedule works when there aren't many 5-stars in the game. The question now is, when is this rerun dropping? Well, soon. The truth is, we can't make any guarantees about when Shorekeeper's going to rerun, but we can be sure that she'll rerun before the characters that have already rerun once. Jian, Yinlin, Shangli Yao, Zheje, Jinshi, and probably Carlotta too. That means the only characters that can rerun before her are Changli and Camellia. So let's look at the banners as a whole. I think it's fair to assume that there will be at least one rerun per patch. So Shorekeeper will either rerun in 2.1 alongside Brant and Phoebe, in 2.2 with Zani, or in 2.3 with, well, whoever releases then. The point is, she's going to jump scare us by rerunning alongside someone shiny and new. Don't be that guy who was caught off guard and misses Shorekeeper twice. That was me with Venti in Genshin Impact, and trust me, the feeling sucks. Alright, those are the main characters to look at. The last thing we need to look at are the two characters that are going to rerun in the second half of patch 2.0. Rejoice Jinshi mains, she's about to get buffed. She's arguably the best character in the game and her stocks are about to get higher. Earlier, I said she was more limited than Rover, and the only way to buff her is to release a dedicated support. Well, yeah, she's getting a dedicated support, and something tells me that it's going to be Zani. No evidence, just a gut feeling. But why do I say this? Well, because of the new Empyrean Anthem set. The 2-piece gives 10% energy regen. The 5-piece gives the active resonator, that's whoever's on field, an additional 20% attack, as long as a coordinated attack crits. Seriously, why are they buffing this woman? And you bet there will be a shiny 5-star that will use this set in the future. The synergy with Jinshi, who also requires units with coordinated attacks on her team, is quite big, so there is no doubt that any resonator on this set will be a great fit on Jinshi's team. Seriously, why? She's about to be clear number 1 again! She's basically Zhongli now. Finally, we have Rochia, the holder of the Midnight Veil set. We got some hands-on time with her as part of 2.0's main quest, and because of that, we know that she's absolutely Camellia's best sub DPS. She's a valuable pull if you're preparing to shift Sanhua to a different team. She has crowd control to pull enemies towards Camellia. She buffs the whole team with her liberation, and then buffs Camellia's basic attack by 25% and her Havoc damage by 20%. And thanks to the Midnight Veil set, she also grants an additional 15% Havoc damage bonus. What else is there to say? It's Camelia's best in slot character. For this reason, I can only assume that the Camellia rerun is already around the corner. If you pull for Rochia, you should keep an eye out for Camelia's rerun. And if you already own Camellia and you want to put your Sandpoise somewhere else, then Rochia may give you a great return on your investment. Sup, editing Cycloid again. And I must say, it's very interesting the way they're releasing these units, right? Like, Camellia, top 3 unit in the game, still gets a dedicated support. It makes Jinshi's situation look a lot less bizarre, you know? And then, while I was editing, I realized, no, they've done this with a lot of people, right? Like Zhang Liao and Yinlin, basically perfect synergy. Though you could also argue that Yinlin is supposed to be for Calcharo. I don't think so though, I'll be honest. We've also got Camellia, obviously dedicated support right there. Carlotta, released from Jeja, which I think is genuinely her dedicated support. Like they just synergize too well together, right? So it makes the situation seem a lot less bizarre in the long run, right? It's interesting to me, like the way they're doing this business model, because pulling for a 5-star will essentially set you up to pull for another 5-star down the road just for the combination, right? I've seen one other game do this, but I don't think anyone ended up pulling for those reasons. But you never know, right? It's something to keep an eye on. So, those are the characters I think we need to keep an eye on as version 2 of Wuthering Waves rolls on. Have I given you an idea of who to pull for in the future? Or maybe I've changed your mind somewhere? If I have, leave a like. Subscriptions are overrated, and bye. Well, that was my first video, so I should probably introduce myself. I'm Cycloid and I've been around for a while. I've been writing as a hobby for a decade, and I've been a musician for the same amount of time. Videos like this aren't going to be too common, but I think I'll post one every time a new Echo set comes out, or a few new characters released. But generally, this channel will be focused on analysing Wuthering Waves' story, breaking it down, and explaining why some parts work and some parts do not. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, then there's your excuse to hit the subscribe button. I'm aiming to release the first part before 2.0 ends, and I'm sure I will. But life is so hectic right now, so I think I'll be focusing on these smaller videos for now. Alright, peace.